Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to this series on Suzuki for Grown-Ups. Now, if you've watched the first video, you understand how understanding what we want to sound like is crucial to making really good progress, to at least giving us a foundation for where to start. Now, one of the ways that we can apply that understanding is with another key Suzuki concept, which is the idea of review pieces. And this is really fundamental to the Suzuki method and applies specifically to kids, but also applies to us as adults. Now, how it applies with children is that when you learn a piece, the idea is that you don't just check off the piece and say, oh, okay, then now that I learned that piece, it's done. I'm not doing that piece anymore. You constantly revisit it. And why do we revisit it? Well, it's because each time you revisit it, you can have a little bit of a different attention to detail, a little bit greater attention to detail. It's very much like a sculptor who might be working with a slab, a stone slab, and needs to start doing some hammer and chisel work. So you do a little hammer and chisel work until the idea that you have in your head starts to take shape. And you can see what it is that you want to do, so you start to make that happen. But you don't try to work on one particular aspect of that sculpture and make that aspect perfect while leaving the rest just a stone slab. Like if you're doing a horse, you wouldn't do the head and make sure all the details of the head are perfect and have this head sticking out of just a solid slab of stone. That would be also unrealistic. You would get the basic shape of the horse, get the head, get the legs, the body, etc. But with only a limited attention to detail, because the detail is going to come as you see the whole of it start to take a better shape. And review repertoire allows us to do the same thing. We learn a skill in a given piece, or we learn a piece that uses a given skill, and we achieve a certain level on that skill. But each time we go back and do that piece again, we can delve a little bit deeper into what it means to really have a solid understanding of how to execute that skill, of how to make that happen, whether it be a musical skill like dynamics, or whether it be a technical skill like legato and achieving a really smooth line. So how do we apply that in what we do? I think one of the great examples we can have comes from Johannes Rochu's work in compiling vocalises of Marco Bordoni for Us for Trombone. So we actually call them either Bordoni or Rochu, however you want to call it. Let's say numbers 1 through 20. And typically, when we're working on them, as students, we work on it, we want to go on to the next one because we feel like, well, if I go on to the next one, it means I'm progressing. And that is true. It is absolutely true that when we go on to the next one, each time we go forward, we learn something new. We learn faster notes. Maybe we learn a different meter. Maybe we learn a different style. And that's great. But when you get to, say, number 40, having the ability to go back and say, hey, I'm just going to play down number 2 or number 3, but this time I'm going to play it knowing what I know at number 40, you bring a different attention to detail. It's the equivalent of going back to that sculpture, having that horse that you're developing, but you don't really have the detail in it. But as you start to see the detail, let's say you start working on the hooves, and you get the hooves to have a certain level of detail, you realize, wait, I need that level of detail on other things too. Then you start to look at how we can go back at these things that we've already worked on and bring a higher level of execution to it, a higher degree of competency, and ultimately a higher degree of execution, and therefore a higher degree of musicianship to what we do. And it's one of the great things that we have at our disposal to work on. Now, I bring this up because so often we just want to move forward. But I think players who play at the highest level, whether they do Suzuki or not, understand that the ability to go backwards and do simple things at a really high level is crucial. I see it with my colleague string players in the BSO who go into the practice rooms and are playing scales. And slow scales, not super fast scales, really slow scales to get back to foundational skills, but who also go back to repertoire, and you can see them doing things really simply to do it at a higher and higher level. I've seen it with my string colleagues. I've seen it with my brass colleagues and woodwind colleagues. This is something that is really invaluable to us. And so consider how you can apply this in your own work, this particular facet, and give it a place in your practicing. I think you'll find that it really has tremendous value to you as an adult. Good luck.